The plates were already set, forks aligned like soldiers in formation. I ran my thumb along the edge of the dinner table one last time, wiping away a speck of dust only I seemed to notice. The scent of roasted chicken hung in the air, but it didn't calm me. It just made the knot in my chest tighter. Every Saturday night we did this. Family dinner. But calling it family felt generous. I could hear the front door open. Laughter. My wife's voice, bright, performative. She greeted my older brother like he was royalty. His wife trailed behind, fake smile already in place. And then there was Tom, the family friend, who showed up so often I began to wonder if he had a bed in our guest room I didn't know about. I sat at the far end of the table, the spot no one fought for, the one furthest from the kitchen, where my wife would inevitably hold court. She always did. The small talk started like clockwork. Weather, real estate, someone's kid getting into a good college. I nodded, contributed where I could, but every sentence somehow ended with a jab aimed squarely at me, just hidden well enough to pass as playful. Then she said it. "Well, at least you're good at washing dishes, huh?" She smirked, swirling her wine. There was a pause, then laughter. My brother chuckled, his wife giggled politely, even Tom cracked a smile. I laughed too, the weak kind, the kind where your voice betrays you a second too late. Inside, something cracked. I didn't look at her, but I felt the heat behind her words. It wasn't a joke. It never was. It was a reminder, a warning shot dressed as wit. The way she said it, like she'd earned the right. No one said anything to defend me. My brother took a long sip from his drink. His wife looked down at her plate. Tom pretended to check his phone. I just sat there smiling with my mouth dying with my eyes. Then my brother jumped in. "Didn't you try that business idea last year? What was it? Some kind of app? How much did you lose again?" I didn't answer. I kept my eyes on the mashed potatoes, pushing them around like I was sculpting something that made sense. My wife leaned back, tilted her head. "Oh, the $1 million invention, right?" Her voice dripped with mock admiration. They laughed again. My dreams, laid out like punchlines. I opened my mouth, maybe to defend myself, maybe just to breathe, but she cut me off. "Let's not ruin the mood, okay? It's dinner." The table buzzed with forced cheer after that, but I was somewhere else. My eyes drifted to the hallway. Upstairs, tucked in a cardboard box, was the sketchbook, the one with the diagrams, the one she hadn't touched since I showed it to her, and she laughed. How did I become the punchline in my own home? I remembered our first date. We sat on a bench by the lake, sharing a cold sandwich and stories about our dreams. She looked at me like I was magic back then. She said I had a mind that worked like an inventor's. I believed her. Now I was a dishwasher with delusions. I stared into my wine glass. Not drinking, just watching. It reflected the chandelier above, fancy, overdone, just like the life she wanted, the life I apparently failed to provide. The dinner dragged on. The laughter felt louder, sharper. I couldn't tell if they meant to cut me or if they were just that careless. Eventually, plates emptied. Chairs scraped back. They said their goodbyes without really looking at me. My wife smiled, walked them to the door, hugged Tom a second too long. I cleaned up. Alone. No one said thank you. No one noticed I was still at the table. She walked by, scraped the leftovers into the trash. My meal included. That was the moment. Late at night, the house silent, I walked to the garage. The concrete floor chilled my feet. Dust particles danced in the sliver of moonlight. I found the old box behind a stack of holiday decorations no one cared about. Inside, my hand-drawn diagrams, pages of ideas, concepts, a sealed envelope marked, "Patent submission, do not open." I hadn't opened it since the day I sent it, 2 years ago. I held the sketch in my hand. The lines were shaky, the ink faded, but it felt alive, like it was the only thing in this house that still believed in me. The garage door creaked as I pulled it shut behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could already picture her upstairs, taking off her earrings, brushing her hair, acting like the night hadn't just been another staged humiliation. The air in the garage hit me hard, sharp, metallic, tinged with oil and something older. Maybe it was regret. Maybe it was just the smell of a life paused too long. I moved slowly, stepping over loose screws, forgotten tools. My hands found the old box again, the one from earlier. I flipped it open, revealing a collage of what used to be belief. Blueprints, notes, bits of wires and metal tucked in sandwich bags. I wasn't sure if my hands were shaking from the cold or from something deeper. I picked up one of the sketches, edges curled, graphite lines faded, and I remembered how I used to feel drawing it, back when I thought one good idea could change everything. I pulled out more papers, flipping through them like chapters in a book I'd written and abandoned. The metal pieces, the circuits, the scraps of prototypes, I handled each one gently, like artifacts from a man I used to be proud of. Then I saw it, an envelope I hadn't noticed before, white, smudged, stuffed between two journals. The handwriting was familiar. I opened it without thinking. Inside was a copy of one of my early designs, my schematic. But this one had notes scrawled on the side. Not mine, my brother's. At first I didn't believe it, but I knew his shorthand, his arrows, his way of circling the margins. I grabbed my phone, pulled up a browser and searched. Took a few minutes, but there it was, a Kickstarter page, 2 years old. The campaign had failed, but the description, the concept, nearly identical. He didn't just laugh at me at that dinner table. He stole from me years before it. I stared at the screen, that burn I'd felt earlier. It came back tenfold. This wasn't just disrespect. It was betrayal, clean-cut and cowardly. He'd used my work, put his name on it, never said a word. I leaned back against the workbench, my breath heavy. I thought the worst of it was the laughing. Turns out that was just the garnish. I kept digging. My fingers reached for a thicker envelope tucked under a binder. No label. I turned it over. Postmarked 2 years ago. I opened it. A letter. From one of the investors I'd reached out to back then. Courteous, firm but interested. Said they wanted to meet but needed clarification on a few points. It wasn't a no. It was a let's talk. But I'd never seen it. The flap had been opened and resealed. I sat down. I asked her back then if anything had come in the mail about the pitch. She'd told me no. Just bills and catalogs. That wasn't a lie to protect me from disappointment. It was a lie to keep me stuck. To preserve the story she liked best, the one where I was always almost good enough. I read it again, slowly this time. The wording was polite, optimistic, and she never gave it to me. She read it, then chose silence. What else had she filtered? What else had she decided I didn't need to know? I folded the letter and placed it beside the old schematic. My hand found a pen. Without thinking, I started tracing the lines on the diagram, cleaner, sharper, like I was redrawing myself. And then I saw it, the old spiral notebook marked Plan B. I'd written that label with a Sharpie one night after a failed pitch. I cracked it open. Inside, a roadmap, one I had forgotten I even created, but the logic still held. The parts, the process, the sequence, it all still worked. A quote stared back at me from the inside cover. When they bury you, remember, they don't know you're a seed. I smiled. Not the kind people see, the kind that's felt, not shown. For the first time in years, I wasn't confused. I wasn't chasing approval or licking wounds. I was rebuilding. The garage was still cold, but I felt something stir under my skin. Something I thought I'd lost. A knock on the garage door. Her voice, flat, almost bored. You coming to bed? I didn't turn. In a minute. The silence after she walked away said everything. She thought I was still sulking, still nursing the bruises from dinner. I picked up the diagram, folded it tight, slid it into a fresh folder. On the front, I wrote one word in capital letters. Now. This time, I wasn't building it for their praise. I was building it because I remembered who I was. I stood under the single bare bulb in the garage, cold concrete floor beneath me, breathing quiet regrets into the air. My hands reached into the dusty plastic bin, and I pulled out a small metal device, rough, scuffed, yet unmistakably mine. It had once worked. A sensor prototype, wires exposed, copper tracing. I didn't expect it to sit there waiting for me. I ran my thumb along its edge, remembering a time when I believed in it more than I believed anything else. That night, years ago, my 35th birthday, had felt like promise. I presented this very device to her, wrapped in a box. I told her it was the start of something grand. She unwrapped it in our apartment living room, friends around. She laughed. "You built a toy, and you thought this would impress me?" Her tone was light, but her eyes sharp. I held my breath as her words echoed over laughter and awkward silence. I escaped into the bathroom for an hour. I told myself it didn't matter. But something inside died that night. Back to now. I held the prototype and a dull ache settled in my jaw. The same one I'd buried so long ago. Why had I ever thought she'd celebrate it? Why did I show it at all? I dipped into the bin again and found a USB stick labeled Demo V1. Curiosity tugged me. I plugged it into the laptop I'd dragged into the garage months ago. The whir of the drive startled me. Emails. Photo attachments. She had sent pictures of that very prototype to her boss years ago. One message read, "This is what my husband's been wasting time on. Look at this mess." The boss replied with a mocking meme. "Garage inventors," he wrote, laughing emojis attached. She laughed with them. My chest tightened. She didn't just dismiss my dream. She auditioned it to the world. To undermine me. I blinked. Rage flickered. I wanted to smash the device, rip it apart, but I couldn't. It still lit up faintly, enough to show promise. They mocked because they didn't understand, or they preferred not to. My fingers trembled as I opened a spiral notebook labeled Plan B. Inside, scribbles I wrote after the first failure. But the logic still worked. The timing, the sensors, the feedback loop, they all aligned. I polished a line, rewrote a circuit. Everything I had improved in silence, I applied now. A faint radio crackled in the corner. My favorite old track played, one I hadn't listened to in years. It was an unexpected spark, soft but real. I leaned forward, heart cold and steady. The pain didn't vanish. It sharpened into clarity. They used me. They buried me. But they forgot what grows under the soil. I wrote an anonymous email to a startup incubator later that night. The attachment, updated blueprint, refined vision, my voice in footnotes. Subject line, "You laughed then. Let's see if you still will." I hit send. The hum of the laptop died. I placed the prototype center stage on my workbench. Not discarded, not hidden, displayed. "I gave this to someone who didn't deserve it," I whispered. The silence around me answered. Dinner that night was almost too quiet. The clinking of forks against plates was louder than any laughter. Her parents were in town, again, and they brought with them the usual air of passive judgment. My wife sat across from me, smiling like everything in life was fine. Then, right as I passed the salt, she lit the fuse. "Our company just filed another patent today," she said, pretending to be casual. "Cutting-edge sensor integration, really clever stuff, way ahead of the curve." I paused, looked up. "What kind of sensor integration?" She rattled off a few features, language too close to mine, too familiar. Words I hadn't said aloud in years. Her father chuckled, sipping wine. "Well, maybe some ideas are better off in the hands of people who know what they're doing." My wife smirked. "Don't get paranoid, babe. I'm just talking shop." I stared at my plate, nodded slowly, and finished dinner in silence. Something had shifted, but not in me. In them. They weren't just dismissive anymore, they were getting bolder. Later that night, I walked back into the dining room. She was alone, scrolling her phone. I stood behind her chair, hands by my sides. "I won't stop you from playing your games," I said quietly. "Just don't forget, quiet people can be dangerous when cornered." She didn't even look up. "What are you now? Some movie villain?" Her mother's voice chimed from the other room. "Oh, honey, he's always been dramatic." I turned, walked out without another word. No yelling, no theatrics, just a line in the sand. Back in the garage, I booted up my laptop. I opened the folder where I'd stored the refined blueprints, updates I'd made night after night since that first spark returned. I logged onto the official patent portal, uspto.gov, heart steady, fingers precise. I restructured the design just enough to avoid legal overlap, used my mother's maiden name as the applicant, encrypted everything, triple backed it up. They wouldn't see this coming. That was the point. Next morning, I was up early, sat at the table with them, smiled, ate my toast, didn't speak much. She glanced over a few times, probably wondering if the warning was just a dramatic moment. That night, I returned to the garage again, rewriting, refining, building, no rage, just focus. I started running again in the mornings, push-ups, squats, not because of vanity, because I needed to feel control return to my body. My voiceover would have said, "They think I'm giving up. That's their mistake." A few nights later, while organizing wires on the bench, my laptop pinged. New email, no name, no greeting. Subject: "You may want to look at what she just filed. It's yours, isn't it?" Attached were screenshots, patent filing documents, complete with diagrams, almost identical to the one I had drawn 10 years ago. Word for word, line for line. They didn't just laugh at me, they were stealing. I woke before dawn. The kitchen was dark and empty. I sat at the table with only the soft hum of the fridge for company. My wife's chair across the table was vacant. Her car had already left. The patent confirmation email glowed on my phone. Under review. That quiet validation felt heavier than applause. I printed a side-by-side of my original prototype sketch and her company's new patent. The similarities cut through me like clean steel. Without a note, I placed those sheets neatly on the table in the center. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. Then I returned to the garage. I continued soldering wires, steady hands, quiet hum. I hummed a melody from years ago, the one I used to whistle on late nights. Everything felt poised. Something in me tightened, readying for change. That evening she walked in, her expression casual. She paused at the papers on the table. "What's this?" she said, voice careful. She tried to wave it off, and, "Oh, parallel innovation, right?" Like it was a technical coincidence. But I had already built my evidence. Timelines, dated images, my original notes. I spoke firmly but calmly. "You knew, and you knew I knew." I didn't yell. I simply laid out facts. Dates, my sketches, her filings. Her eyes flickered. In-laws stepped in, assuming she'd regain control, but I pressed on. "You all thought I'd never speak up. Today I did. That's enough for now." The silence that followed felt heavier than any confrontation I might have had. Later, while the night pressed in, a LinkedIn message lit my screen. "Alicia, once a lead on her team. She asked to talk." I answered. Her voice was quiet but certain. "I left after realizing much of the project came from your diagrams." She said she assumed I knew, that she thought her silence meant complicity. She revealed something worse. My wife had boasted to others that she dumbed it down so he could follow. Her words. She hung up with a single line. "She only wins when you stay quiet." I stared at the phone. That hit deeper than any insult. I walked back to the workbench, notebook open. Alicia's words weighed like truth on my chest. How many years had I carried her stolen credit as my shame? How many times had I apologized for myself in my own head? Now I recorded a video. No flourish, no demand. Just me, my voice, my story. I explained the design, the journey, how the theft happened. Not for attention, but for proof. I edited it, uploaded a private link. Not shared yet. Just there. Its existence gave me calm. She entered the garage, her tone flat. "So, are we done with your little tantrum?" I didn't respond. I walked to the table, handed her a flash drive. I said quietly, "Watch it before you open your mouth again." I turned and left without looking back. The line had been drawn. I wasn't asking anymore. I was proving. Morning light showed up on my phone before I touched it. A friend texted me a screenshot my wife had posted about me. "My husband's delusion," she called it. She'd posted photos of that prototype taken without my consent. The caption? Funny what people brag about. Comments flooded in. Snickers, laughing emojis. Stay creative, buddy jabs. My in-laws chimed in, tagging their friends. My chest constricted. I stared at that screen as if it were a mirror, and it showed everything I had tried to ignore. I breathed deep. So that's how she wanted to play this. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked to the garage, printed every post, every comment, every timestamp delay. The paper stack clacked softly. I messaged my old law school friend who now specialized in patents. I called Alicia and asked her to record a testimony, her account of how much her team borrowed from my work. I methodically organized my evidence, pulling originals, emails, CAD files. My voice in my head, if I cry, they'll mock me. If I yell, they'll pretend insanity. But if I prove them wrong, that's war. I worked into late hours, precise and cold. The next morning, I walked into a law office, evidence in hand. I sat across a suit, lawyer, clipboard, nodding. I laid out my case with calm certainty. I showed dated blueprints, timestamps, the video file of my confession. I filed complaints with the USPTO and FTC, alleging IP theft, unfair business practice, demand for injunction. He looked at me, eyes wide. With what you have, this may destroy their credibility, he said quietly. I left without fanfare, stepping outside and inhaling a breeze I hadn't felt in years. They'd written me off. I was about to rewrite my story. Back home, I watched her move through rooms, lights off, music on, oblivious. She lived in blissful ignorance of the legal storm I wrote. In the garage, I deleted redundant files, cleared clutter, left only the original journal where I'd recorded every phase of invention. I thought for years I wanted her respect, but respect is worthless when it's forced. I cut power to the garage lights, symbolic, minimal, but a reset in my mind. My inbox pinged. Filing received. Review has begun. Then again, someone had viewed the video link I uploaded last night from her company. I let a small, steady smile form. They're starting to feel it. I woke to my phone buzzing, dozens of notifications lighting up the screen, shares, tagged posts, memes. My wife's recent post about me had gone viral. The message, a subtle jab dressed in humor. My husband's delusion at work. Accompanying it, photos of my prototype, cropped, decontextualized. I scrolled through the comments, sarcastic praise, sideways digs, nice try, buddy. Her in-laws chimed in with comments, keep pushing, followed by laughing emojis. The sting tightened my chest. She acted unaffected later, pouring her coffee with a polite nod. Her tone toward me, dismissive, practiced. I caught her texting, probably adding fuel behind my back. In that moment, I remembered, pardon doesn't change the fact that I'm on the battlefield. I gathered every piece of evidence I had. Timestamps, versions of design diagrams, message threads. I drafted a presentation for the upcoming tech event where Oren would speak. He was showcasing the AI device we both knew was rooted in my work. I reached out to Juno, the attorney, asking whether I had a legal right to expose Oren publicly. She confirmed the risks were manageable with strong proof. I rehearsed a short, factual speech. No emotion, only logic. I kept reminding myself, this speech is not revenge, it's clarity. Then I looked at the slide deck one more time, breathing steady, ready. The venue buzzed with excitement. Oren walked the stage, confident. My heart pounded, but my resolve was cold. I sat in the audience near the middle, laptop open, slides loaded. The moment came during QA. I stood. Excuse me, I said. Silence dropped. I called his answer into question. I projected side-by-side images, my original sketches beside his produced device. The crowd murmured, phones flashed. Oren froze mid-sentence. Sylvia's face drained. There was no denying it. The evidence spoke. I stepped down. The reaction was immediate. The audience gasped. Some backed away. Investors whispered. Sylvia attempted a retort. Parallel development. But her voice cracked. Oren spluttered, stumbling over words about coincidence. Her lawyer gestured, but the momentum had shifted. I didn't push further. I stepped back quietly, letting the truth hang in the air. Behind me, cameras panned. I walked off that stage certain one thing. I'd cracked the facade. Later, outside my garage, I found a sealed envelope resting on concrete. It was a subpoena. Oren, Sylvia, their company, summoned to court. I stared at the thin paper, heart steady. I pulled out my phone, glanced at the pending patent confirmation, a quiet confirmation. They no longer had the choice to silence me. I walked into the courtroom dressed simply, dark slacks, crisp shirt, no showy tie. My heart thudded, but my steps were quiet, deliberate. The gallery was packed, press cameras, old colleagues, tech industry watchers. Sylvia entered on the opposite side, flanked by high-paid attorneys and her polished legal team. She wore a tailored suit, heels clicking. I took my seat. Behind me, Alicia sat, calm, resolute. Just moments before, in an empty hallway, Juno and I rehearsed every question I might face. "Stay firm. Speak only truth," she whispered. Now, as the judge called the session to order, I inhaled steady, braces straight. They came for spectacle. I came to testify. Her lawyer began, his voice confident. "Your Honor, my client spearheaded this innovation. He painted her as visionary, crediting her for the company's success." Murmurs spread. I sat silently. When it was our turn, my attorney rose, slid forward, annotated documents showing my sketches predating her filings. And he matched version dates, file metadata, and email correspondences. The courtroom shifted. Faces turned. The judge leaned forward. Behind me, a flashback clip played. My recorded prototype demo video, time-stamped, authentic, exactly matching features in her device. Gasps stirred. My eyes locked on Sylvia's. She studied me. Then Alicia took the stand. Her testimony hit like thunder. She recounted a meeting where Sylvia said, "I refined my husband's half-baked work." She revealed internal emails showing intent to commercialize without credit. Lawyers' faces paled. Whispers broke. The courtroom tension crackled. Sylvia's team scrambled to object. I stayed silent. In my mind, "You didn't need me to scream. Let the truth echo." The judge called for recess. Back in session, Sylvia sat, shaky and pale, called to testify. Under cross-examination, she cracked. The judge questioned the emails, the social media posts, the proof. Her voice trembled. "Fine." He never had the guts to finish anything. I just completed it. The courtroom stiffened. Her lawyer objected, but the damage was done. She broke. I watched her, not with anger, but with release. A burden shifted. Outside, the air felt cleaner. When the judge declared a break for deliberation, the courtroom emptied. Reporters swarmed. I said nothing. I walked into the restroom, rinsed my face, stared at myself in the mirror. For years, I held my silence. Now, I built something from it. I touched the ridge of my jaw, measured how much I'd changed, and how much had always been there. The courtroom was still when the verdict was read. In my favor, Sylvia was ordered to pay damages, surrender royalties, and issue a formal retraction. The headlines exploded within the hour. Every outlet, every blog, even people who didn't know our names yesterday were suddenly experts in betrayal and redemption. I sat alone in a quiet hotel room later that evening, scrolling through a sea of comments. Some called me brave. Others apologized for ever doubting me. It wasn't pride I felt, just stillness. Like a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding had finally left my body. An old mentor of mine called. Said he saw the news, said a morning show wanted to bring me in. I thanked him and turned it down. I wasn't interested in becoming anyone's tragic inspiration of the week. Back home, a few days passed. The air was crisp. My backyard felt like a different world. We held a small gathering, just Juno, Alicia, and a couple of friends who'd stood with me when the noise was loud and loyalty was rare. I stood near the garden, hose in hand, watering slowly. Alicia joined me, handing me a cup of tea. We didn't talk much at first. We didn't need to. Then she said, "You did it." I looked at her, then the roses just starting to bloom. "The most beautiful things don't shout," I replied. "They grow." Juno pulled me aside later. Said the university wanted me back, offered a fellowship under my name. I hadn't smiled much lately, not genuinely. But that moment, I did. And it felt earned. Before everyone left, I knelt in the far corner of the yard, dug a small hole, buried my old journal, pages filled with sketches, notes, memories soaked in hurt. Over it, I planted a white lily, not for beauty, for peace. Weeks later, an email landed in my inbox. A media agency, backed by venture capital, offered a six-figure deal for rights to my story. A documentary, a book, a podcast. I sat with it, stared at the numbers, then I closed the laptop. I didn't need that kind of noise. I didn't want to watch my story chopped and served like a sideshow. Instead, I self-published a short memoir. Quiet, honest, raw. Every cent would go towards STEM scholarships for rural girls. I mailed a signed copy to Sylvia. No letter, no explanation, just closure. When the postman drove away, I stood in the driveway a long while. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. A few days passed. I returned to my old workshop, clean, sunlit, still. I wiped dust off the workbench, picked up a pencil, sketched a new idea. Nothing to prove this time, just curiosity, just joy. The old voiceovers that had haunted me, the criticisms, the doubts, the laughter, were gone, replaced by my own voice. Steady. Sure, we spend so long proving we're not broken, we forget we're brilliant. That same evening, an email pinged through. A teenage girl, Midwest, small town, said she watched the trial online, said she had an idea too, something with solar panels and water purification. She asked if I'd be willing to give her advice. I stared at the screen, a grin forming. Then I typed back, "Tell me what you're building." The next morning, I stepped into the backyard barefoot, coffee in hand. The air was cool, sunlight warm. I scrolled my phone, her reply still loading. I looked up at the sky, breathed it all in, and said softly to no one in particular, it was never about revenge. It was always about restoration. The screen lit up. Her message had come through. Sometimes your healing becomes someone else's blueprint.